Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have radio waves. Every day, thousands of times a day, Earth receives signals that come from outer space by way of radio waves. These radio waves come in super fast bursts that are only a few thousandths of a second long, so this may not seem like much, and we could just kind of chalk it up to some weird space thing we don't quite understand, but the weirdest part that makes it all the more intriguing is that some of them appear to repeat. One important clue about these bursts is in how they arrive. Higher frequency radio waves appear first, and then they are followed by ones with a lower frequency in a sort of falling or cascading effect. This is likely what is known as the propagation effect, which means that the original event, whatever is causing these radio signals to be sent out in the first place, emits all the signals at once, but the lower frequency ones travel at a slower pace. Just slightly slower than the higher ones, thus we have this delayed arrival to Earth. If this is the case, this means that wherever the signals are coming from is very far away. This is because it would take quite a significant amount of time for this effect to show up as clearly as it does on our telescopes, and if that's the case, and we are still able to detect them after all of those intervening millions of years of travel through space, then they must have started out as very bright. This was a really long way of saying, hey, we get these radio bursts every single day and we have no idea what they are or where they come from, but they just might be millions of years old. Theories as to what could be causing the waves ranges from exploding stars to colliding neutron stars, or comets smashing into neutron stars, or maybe something I'll absolutely never understand like evaporating black holes or quote, oscillating primordial cosmic strings. In our number 9 spot today we have the origins of life. Where did life originate from? I know many people have their own theories and beliefs, and I'm not here to discredit or judge any of those. I'm just here to say that we have no evidence to prove anyone's theory. We simply just don't know, so at this point, your guess is as good as mine. Many people choose to believe that life began here on Earth, especially considering we have no evidence of life existing anywhere else in the parts of the universe that we've observed, but scientists aren't quite convinced. It's very true that life could have begun somewhere else and ended up being brought to Earth on a meteorite, or perhaps some other sort of cosmic collision is what landed life here. Scientists aren't even exactly sure which area of science would be able to find these answers, and even if they could agree, who knows where we should even start looking. The only reason this mystery gets a little eerie is, since we don't know where life began or how it originated, who knows exactly who or what else is out there in terms of life forms. This is exactly what leads us into our next point. In our number 8 spot today we have, where is everybody? Perhaps one of the biggest space mysteries out there is, are we alone in the universe? Are we the only intelligent life that exists? Where the heck is everyone else? We can all hypothesize and make educated guesses, but at the end of the day, no one really knows, because to know, you have to have proof and evidence. There are many theories as to why we haven't found any extraterrestrial friends yet, and they range from the belief that we are the only intelligent life in the universe to the belief that we are a nursery planet right now that is protected from other advanced civilizations so as to not disrupt our development. I love this idea. We just have an alien babysitter? What is that? A weirdly comforting thought. Despite all these theories, at the end of the day, we don't know where aliens are or if they exist at all. A Pennsylvania State University team that was being led by Dr. Jason Wright made an astonishing point, however, when they said that there is no mystery. We have searched only a fraction of the galaxy equivalent to the water in a hot tub compared to all of Earth's oceans. This is certainly something to consider. As Douglas Adams puts it, quote, space is big. You won't believe just how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. In our number 7 spot today we have dark energy. Astronomer Edwin Hubble, whom the Hubble telescope is obviously named after, in the 1920s made the discovery that the universe is not static, and in fact it is actually expanding. He was studying a supernova when he realized that the universe was not only expanding, but was expanding at a much higher rate now than it was a long time ago. This discovery was groundbreaking because prior to it, scientists believed that the gravity of matter would end up at least slowing the expansion of the universe, if not causing it to contract on itself. Since this switched up everyone's way of thinking so much, there then began to be the debated topic of dark energy. This is the idea that there is this inexplicable force that is pulling all of the cosmos apart at speeds that are only increasing. Dark energy is said to make up 73% of the universe, but we still haven't been able to pin it down and directly detect it. Basically what I'm saying is that we're pretty sure it's there, but we have no idea what it is, despite it making up such a large portion of our universe. So that's just a little terrifying. In our number 6 spot today, we have dark matter. Okay, if dark energy and all the mysteries it holds weren't enough, now we've got dark matter to talk about, and I'm sorry, but there's just no more answers with this one. In the 1960s and the 1970s, scientists began to hypothesize that there might be more mass in the universe than we can see. After this, an astronomer at the Carnegie Institute of Washington named Vera Rubin was studying the speeds of stars at different locations within galaxies. What she found was that there was essentially no difference in the velocity of the stars, whether they were closer to the center of the galaxy or further out. This was an interesting discovery because that defied the most basic laws of physics, right? Like, applying what we knew at that point, it would have made more sense for the stars on the outskirts of the galaxy to orbit more slowly than those at the center. In order to explain this, astronomers began discussing the phenomena of dark matter. It can't be seen, but it has a mass, which is how it is able to be detected because it exerts some sort of gravitational pull on regular matter. Dark matter makes up 23% of the universe, and if you remember, dark energy accounts for 73%, so that leaves us with a whole whopping 4% of matter that we understand better and know more about, which is things like humans, planets, stars, that sort of thing. The other 96% of what the universe is made of is one of space's greatest mysteries that we just can't seem to figure out yet. So, I don't know. I'm scared. In our number 5 spot today, we have the galactic recoil. One of the galaxies that sits closest to us here in the Milky Way is the galaxy we refer to as the Andromeda Galaxy, and within it we have found this strangely shaped cluster of stars that has been stumping researchers for quite a while. Recently, it is possible that a newer theory might have actually found an answer to this mystery, but the answer is more terrifying than the mystery itself. This question has been around for decades, and this new research might also help researchers to better understand how galaxies grow by feeding on each other. Basically, every galaxy has a supermassive black hole at their center. I know, it's terrifying, but it's just the way it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. So this new study is showing that when two galaxies collide, which yes, also unfortunately happens, the supermassive black holes and their cores then release a huge, devastating, powerful kickback. It's like the recoil from a shotgun. This new study and research is now showing and suggesting that this kickback may be so strong that it can knock millions of stars into like different, wonky, strange orbits, and then that would be the answer as to why this star cluster behaves so strangely. Basically, the collision and the waves won't affect the stars in the galaxy directly, but then the recoil is going to throw the remaining supermassive black hole through space, and when I say throw, I'm talking about this black hole traveling at millions of miles per hour, and we also have to remember that supermassive black holes have a mass that can be millions and even billions times that of the sun. This means that the kickback could be powerful enough for them to entirely escape the galaxy, and if they don't, they may pull the orbit of the stars around them, thus creating this wonky situation we've been wondering about. Of course, that was the most basic way of explaining it because, I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm a YouTuber, but it's crazy. In our number 4 spot today, we have asteroids. Every year this is a prediction that comes up, and it's the sort of cosmic event that makes people believe that this is the year an apocalypse-inducing asteroid is going to collide with Earth. Of course, scientists work diligently to detect anything that might be on a path to Earth and might threaten our wonderful planet, but like anything, sometimes things slip through and we get a frightening surprise, like what happened just a few years ago. On August 16th, 2020, just after midnight in eastern US time, a small asteroid buzzed past our planet just 2,950 kilometers above Earth's surface. That may seem like a far way away, but in terms of asteroids, that is a miss that is too close for comfort. Here's the worst part. The asteroid was only discovered a few hours after it made its close approach to Earth. The good news is that this is because of the size, because it wasn't a relatively huge one, and if it hadn't have missed and ended up colliding with Earth, it either would have broken up in the atmosphere or it wouldn't have been super catastrophic, world-ending sort of a thing. What I'm trying to say is that while it is something we are tracking and keeping tabs on, there's a lot of sky and space to cover, and you never know what might slip through the cracks. In our number 3 spot today, we have bye-bye galaxies. Okay, did you know that galaxies can die? I didn't until I learned about this. It is said that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. When it was just a youngster at only 3 billion years old, it was going through an extremely important period in its development, and this was the most prolific period of star birth in its entire history. New research from NASA using the Hubble Space Telescope along with the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array in northern Chile, they gazed towards the cosmic objects in this period, and that is when they found something that hadn't been seen before. 6 different dead galaxies. By this, I mean that they had run out of the cold hydrogen needed to make stars, and without the fuel for stars, these galaxies were basically running on empty. At this point in our universe, all of the galaxies should have been forming tons of stars. I mean, ours certainly was, as can be seen by a glance towards the night sky, especially in areas that aren't clouded by light pollution. This discovery is absolutely fascinating, but it's led us to a new question we didn't even know we had before. What led these galaxies to this point, and what happened to all of the cold gas in them so early on? The 6 galaxies lived fast, hot lives, but we aren't sure what went wrong. Lead author and assistant professor of astronomy at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, Kate Whitaker, proposed several potential explanations and gave us insight into the future of the studies when she said, quote, "Did a supermassive black hole in the galaxy's center turn on and heat up all of the gas? If so, the gas could still be there, but now it's hot. Or it could have been expelled and now it's being prevented from accreting back into the galaxy. Or did the galaxy just use it all up and the supply is cut off?" The questions really are endless, and it's unclear whether we'll ever know the answers for sure or not. In our number 2 spot today, we have how big is the universe? Okay, so we have our sun, which is a star that is surrounded by, we'll say, 9 planets, and that makes up our solar system. Our solar system is located within the Milky Way galaxy, and it is currently believed that there are about 100 to 400 billion stars within our galaxy, and at least that many planets, but likely more. That's a lot of planets and stars floating around in our galaxy alone, but that's not it. In our observable universe, the things we can tangibly see, there are about 150 billion other galaxies. And that's just what we can see. That number could technically go on for, well, that's exactly the thing. We don't know how much that number could grow, but it's theorized that the number is 250 times higher than the 150 billion that we can see. That's an incomprehensible amount, and that's just galaxies. When we take that knowledge and apply it to how many solar systems that would mean and how many planets, I can totally understand why we may never know for sure just how big the universe is, but it really does have this ability to make you feel exceptionally small. This, coupled with the theories of how the universe is infinite and always expanding, and things get even more convoluted. Just trying to wrap my head around it is a struggle in itself. In our number 1 spot today, we have how will the universe end? Perhaps a morbid question, but it's a good one. I mean, all good things must come to an end, and that might include the universe itself, but maybe it doesn't. I mean, we don't know. That's the whole point of this video. There are theories such as the Big Crunch, which suggests that the expansion of the universe, which has been ongoing since the Big Bang, will eventually slow to a stop, and then the universe will give way to the force of gravity, essentially just pulling everything, planets, galaxies, it all, into a single dense point until everything is just wiped out. There are other theories out there such as the Big Freeze, the Big Bounce, or the Big Rip, which sounds the most terrifying of them all, although I'm not particularly interested in any of the options so far. The good news is that this is all billions and billions of years away, so we won't be around to find out regardless, but when it does happen, it'll be a pretty spectacular event.
But coming in at number 10, what came before the Big Bang? So the Big Bang was what started the universe billions of Earth years ago. But what came before that? We honestly don't really know, and our smartest minds theorize the answer is extremely simple. Stephen Hawking noted that the answer could literally be nothing. We have no observable evidence of what came before everything. I come from the Top 10 Nerd channel, and this question has been answered in different ways in comic books. In Marvel, they say that we are in a version of the cosmos, meaning there was a previous version that ended up getting destroyed and remade. But if that's the case, what's doing the destroying and the remaking? If nothing came before, then what the heck caused the Big Bang in the first place? If there was something before, what would that do to the way we think about the universe? And if something is responsible for it all, I don't know if our tiny little human brains could actually handle that. Number 9. Gravity paradox. This question is a pretty simple one, but yet it's got a lot of scientists kind of completely stumped. Why can a refrigerator magnet defy an entire planet's gravitational pull? It's basically asking why gravity can be such a strong force in the universe but also be such a weak one in other instances. Some scientists believe that gravity may well be as strong as other forces like electromagnetism and the force that holds the nucleus together, but they think that gravity's influence is dissipated because it leaks into extra dimensions. That's just a theory though, because we actually have no idea. That one little question about refrigerator magnets has kind of brought the whole idea of gravity into question. If it is being dissipated into extra dimensions, that opens up way more questions than it actually answers. Obviously, I'm not smart enough to answer this question. I am, after all, just a YouTube host, not a scientist, but I would just think it's all subjective, right? Like, a planet is so huge that the things that are on the planet would have to follow different gravitational rules, right? And like a magnet is still being affected by the Earth's gravity, it's just so small in comparison that it can do its own thing? I'm literally talking out my butt right now. I honestly don't know what I'm talking about. We should just move on before I make myself sound more dumb than I already am. Number 8. How big is the universe? I don't know if you guys have seen that clip from Pete Holmes' stand-up routine, but he talks about how none of any of this makes any sense. The universe is constantly expanding and infinitely. Infinity is getting bigger, and like Pete says, that makes no freaking sense. If the universe is constantly expanding, and we know it's constantly expanding, then when posed with the question of how big the universe is, someone would be able to give you an answer, but we don't actually have a number for that because we literally don't know the shape of the universe, and we don't know the actual rate at which the universe is expanding, we just know that it is. To me, this question almost doesn't matter for most of us because even if we were to try to go to the edge of the universe, no one here can live long enough to make that journey. It takes roughly 9 to 12 years to get to Pluto, and that's just the furthest planet, yes I'm calling it a planet, in our solar system, which itself is just an extremely tiny speck in our Milky Way galaxy, which is also just a tiny speck in the vastness of the universe. It's all too big. Is what I'm basically saying here. Number 7, expansion. The last point does lead me nicely into this next point though, which is the fact that while we know the universe is constantly expanding, we can't actually put a pin on the rate at which it is actually expanding. For the past 6 years, the Hubble Space Telescope has been calculating the speed at which the universe is expanding, and recently came up with what is accepted as the most precise measurement to date, except that the rate stands in direct conflict with independent measurements of the early universe's expansion. That's unsettling for astrophysicists because it means we know even less about our universe and its ways than we thought we did. But if we do learn this one, would that be a good thing? Or would it just help us all feel more and more meaningless and tiny? Of course, these are scientific questions, so our emotions about these things aren't really important, but I'm just saying, I already feel small and insignificant. Number 6, the multiverse. If you have been keeping up with the MCU, then you are at least familiar with the idea of a multiverse. Essentially, it means that if you go far enough into the universe, things would have to start repeating because there's only a finite number of ways that particles can be arranged in space and time. According to theories, the universe is flat and infinite, so those particles would have to repeat, creating another universe with another Earth and yes, another you. And because it's all infinite, there would be infinite versions of you who could be doing the exact same things as you right now, or maybe they wore different clothes today, or had a completely different job, or honestly, there are an infinite number of variables here. The thing is, we will most likely never know if this theory is true or not. And even if we did, that means there would be an evil alternate you, or maybe you are the evil alternate one. I don't know about that one, man. I don't like that. Number 5, what the heck is dark matter? Dark matter gives out no light, or at least too little light for us to detect. We know it exists because we see the effect of its gravity on the stars and the galaxies, like the Milky Way, which could not have dragged in enough matter to make its own stars in the 13.82 billion years since the Big Bang without there being a lot of invisible matter whose extra gravity helped speed things along. I hope that wasn't too confusing. The European Space Agency Planck satellite found that dark matter accounts for 26.8% of the mass energy of the universe compared with the 4.5% of normal atomic matter. This basically means that dark matter outweighs the visible stars and galaxies that we can actually see by a factor of about 6. And yet, no Earth-based experiment has found any evidence of dark matter at all. And we have been looking for a long time. It's totally possible that our theory of matter, or more likely our theory of gravity, needs to be reworked and fiddled with. It's also possible that maybe the universe is filled with dark stars and dark planets and dark life. What does that even mean? I don't know. Do you know? Because I don't. Number 4, what is time and does it even exist? So, when we talk about time, we imagine it flowing, like a river, like a time stream. But for something to flow, by definition, it has to flow with respect to something else, like how a river flows with respect to a river bank. So, does time flow with respect to something else? Another kind of time? Maybe? I don't know. The idea seems kind of stupid and kind of just made up, but most likely the flow of time is an illusion that we created on our own with our brains to organize the information constantly flooding in through our senses. We also have a strong sense of a shared past, present, and future. However, the idea of a common present, meaning the time right now that everyone's in, doesn't actually exist in our understanding of relativity. Precisely how someone else's time is sliced up depends on how fast they are moving relative to you or the strength of the gravity they are experiencing. These effects are only really noticeable with things like the speed of light and supermassive gravity, which is why they are not super obvious to us in everyday life. But it basically means the idea that one person's interval of time is not the same as another person's, and that one person's interval of time is not the same as another's. If you watch Interstellar, there's a pretty basic explanation of this, as different members of the crew age differently as they split up to different places around a massive black hole and other planets whose gravities affect all the characters differently time-wise. It's just, my brain hurts actually a lot right now. Number 3, do we have everything wrong? Isaac Newton's theory of gravity was accurate enough to fly spacecraft to the moon, but it began breaking down when extremely high speeds and very strong gravitational fields became known to us. Then, Einstein's theory of general relativity came in and was a better alternative. It correctly describes the bending of starlight by gravity, the orbital decay of binary pulsars, and the warping of space-time around a black hole. Really cool stuff like that. General relativity is currently physicists' best theory of gravity, but it doesn't answer everything, obviously, which is why history will probably repeat itself and physicists might discover small effects that would hint at an even better theory of gravity. Einstein's theory has passed most of the things that might test it with flying colors, but physicists will keep putting their theories on the rack. One day it may even fail, not being completely wrong, but just one small part to a bigger puzzle that none of us will be alive to learn the answer to. Number 2, Earth, Martians. Oh boy, this one's a doozy. Okay, so look, we take it for granted that life on Earth actually began here. We just kind of assume that that's the way things worked. But that's not actually necessarily accurate. Apparently, scientists are actually finding evidence that life on Earth may have instead come from Mars, and was brought to this planet by like a meteorite at some point in Earth's incredibly long history. The trouble is that scientists themselves can't even agree on which area of science will provide the answer to this conundrum, and let alone whether science is even where we should look to answer it, which, like Pete said about the universe's expansion, that makes no frickin' sense. What do you mean? What do you mean we can't? What? Number 1, aliens. Since the early 1960s, scientists have theorized that it's extremely likely that intelligent life exists outside of Earth, and I, for one, totally agree. The math kind of has to mean it's true. The universe is ever expanding, infinite, and contains countless other galaxies just like ours, with planets that would be in the similar position as ours is to their sun, and with the right conditions for life to actually thrive and grow, like the planet Kepler 186f, which you should look up if you haven't before. It's kind of cool. The trouble is that we have basically zero scientific evidence to prove that the life could potentially exist or does in fact exist. In fact, we have no hard scientific evidence that any life exists outside of Earth. Although with that planet, we actually just can't see that far down onto like the surface of the planet to see what's going on. So it could be there, we just can't see it. Although we are finding some fun stuff on Mars that may say otherwise. The time may be drawing closer and closer to when science confirms that there is life elsewhere in our solar system or the galaxy, or at least somewhere in the universe, and I really hope I'm alive for that. The thing that gets me though is if whatever is out there is advanced enough to see us too, and if it is advanced enough to see us, then is it advanced enough to make it here? And if that's the case, then we are not as advanced as that, and we should stand no chance in defending ourselves against something like that, assuming they would want to hurt us, which as humans we would just assume they would, and if they didn't, I think our stupid human brains wouldn't be able to handle the fear of not knowing, and we'd do something dumb like attack them, and then we'd be gone because we just can't stand up to that kind of thing, you know what I'm saying?
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have life on Mars. This is a legend that's been around for quite some time, especially since the 1970s when the Viking 1 and 2 were launched. This legend basically suggests that there is, or at least was, alien life on Mars, and that NASA knows about it, but they are just keeping the little secret to themselves. Like all space conspiracies, this legend ranges from some pretty out there but still based in reality ideas, all the way to absolutely absurd tinfoil hat vibes. What I mean is that some believe this is true because they claim to see alien fossils in the photos of the surface of Mars that we have. There are others who think that maybe NASA just isn't searching for signs of alien life at all. And then there are those who think that Mars is actually fully inhabited by like half alien, half human creatures, and NASA's just hiding that from us. I'll let you decide on this one. In our number 9 spot today, we have X-37b. So I guess this one is more like a NASA mystery rather than an urban legend, but basically they sent a space shuttle up, but no one knows exactly what it's for. Throughout the last few years, an X-37b spacecraft has gone on a number of different missions up into the orbit of Earth, but no one is willing to spill the beans on what these missions are aimed at doing. Of course, like with any legend, the theories are abound. Some people believe the purpose of these missions is to test out new technology. Very reasonable, but there are others out there who think that these missions are meant to destroy different satellites, or that this craft is really some kind of space weapon, but only time will tell if all of the secrets of the craft ever get declassified. In our number 8 spot today, we have the live stream. This is an urban legend that stems from an ISS live stream a few years ago. Back in 2016, alien enthusiasts and UFO watchers noticed as they watched a live stream that was being broadcast from the ISS two objects that seemed to be entering Earth's atmosphere. These objects were unidentified and they looked like they were tumbling toward Earth, so many people took this image to be UFOs. To only add more fuel to the fire shortly after these objects could be seen, the live stream was cut off abruptly. NASA swears that this was merely just a coincidence, and while that is possible, not everyone is convinced that's the case. In our number 7 spot today, we have changes. Okay, other than those who have been to space, who's to say what experiencing something like that would do to just your entire outlook on life, and especially your mental health. I mean, on one hand, it's gotta be one of the most incredible experiences, but on the other side, it would be terrifying and probably kind of lonely. Spending weeks and sometimes even months in the vast darkness of space, as amazing as it sounds, it likely isn't for the faint of heart. That is exactly why this NASA legend suggests that many of the astronauts who have been to space have returned with changes in their behavior, and apparently NASA has done everything they can to deny this. It is said that there is a psychologist who has worked with many NASA employees who actually went on to criticize the agency for denying that these behavioral changes existed, and she even suggested that they be looked into and researched more because she believes it goes deeper than any of us may even realize. This would include more in-depth screening both before and after the missions. This legend is likely to have developed in 2007 after former astronaut Lisa Nowak was arrested for harming someone, to which she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Mystery House. You may or may not have heard about the Mystery House that was seen on the moon in November of last year. This mysterious object was spotted by the U-2 rover, but at the time this rover was at such a distance it needed time to get there to check it out. Months later, when the rover arrived, it was released that it was in fact just a weird shaped rock, but not everyone is convinced, and legend has it this just may be a cover-up for what this Mystery House really is. is. Of course, people believe that this mysterious object likely has some sort of alien or extraterrestrial origin, despite what researchers are saying. In our number 5 spot today we have space signals. It is no secret that NASA has been tracking and looking into a ton of mysterious radio signals referred to as fast radio bursts that have been detected in space. Some of these signals we have been able to find the source of, but some have been plaguing the minds of scientists everywhere since they were first discovered. Legend has it, however, that NASA knows exactly where these signals are coming from, and of course it's aliens, but they just don't want to tell us. What do you think? Do you think NASA would keep aliens a secret from us, or is this just some space conspiracy sort of stuff? Let us know down below in the comments. In our number 4 spot today we have black holes. Of course, black holes are one of the most terrifying and mysterious parts of space, and while we know they exist, we really don't know much else about them. Of course, people and researchers will try to get a closer glimpse at them and maybe even try and take matters into their own hands and attempt to recreate the conditions of a black hole right here on Earth. The world's largest particle accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider or LHC, which has been credited with proving the existence of the Higgs boson particle, is part of the source of another space legend, and that has to do with the idea that NASA is creating their own black hole. Some believe this project is intentional, while others just worry about it becoming a reality accidentally. It's true that if this were to happen it would be bad news, but luckily this probably isn't very likely and may not even be possible. In our number 3 spot today we have secrets. Of course, NASA knows a lot more than the average person would when it comes to the likely fate of our planet. I mean, they know a lot more about the planet than the average person, and tell me this, when was the last time you even looked through a telescope? It's just safe to say they are better briefed on all of the cosmic horrors that threaten our planet. We are definitely more well versed with the disasters that we may face here on the planet, but when it comes to threats that sit thousands of light years away, well, we definitely aren't the experts. That is the basis for this theory or legend that should NASA find out that we are facing some sort of humanity-destroying space threat, that they wouldn't even tell us. NASA would likely know about a life-altering asteroid collision long before it happened, but some people think that even if they had the time to warn us, they just wouldn't. And it doesn't even stop at the usual threat like an asteroid. This belief includes things like pieces of space junk, an alien invasion, the sun burning us alive. Really, as wild as you can get, people think NASA would just keep it all a secret. In our number 2 spot today we have preparations. On July 20th, 1969, President Nixon made a call that would rack up some astronomically large long-distance charges when he called the Apollo 11 astronauts who were, at the time, on the moon. He of course wanted to congratulate them on this incredible achievement, but as it turns out, he maybe wasn't all that confident that the mission was going to be successful. His former speechwriter let it slip that there was in fact an emergency broadcast script that had been written should the mission have gone south. The speech was later leaked and it said, quote, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice." I know everyone's got to have a contingency plan, but if I was one of those astronauts, it would be a little bit chilling to have heard about the words that were prepared in the case that you were just being left out in space forever. In our number 1 spot today we have stuck. Recently, on a Space Legends myth list, we talked about the Fisher space pen, and today we are talking about how it relates to another NASA legend. Basically, Nixon almost did have to use that speech he had prepared, because following the historic moonwalk, Aldrin and Armstrong discovered that a 1-inch engine arm circuit breaker switch had broken off the instrument panel. This was an integral part of getting the engine to ignite so that they would be able to make it back home, so rightfully so, they were pretty terrified. The broken switch was reported to Mission Control, but by the next morning they still didn't have a solution. Aldrin explained that, quote, "After examining it more closely, I thought that if I could find something in the LM to push into the circuit, it might hold. But since it was electrical, I decided not to put my finger in or use anything that had metal on the end." This is where the legend comes in. People claimed that he used one of the Fisher space pens to help him fix this broken switch, but that isn't entirely true. It wasn't a Fisher pen, but he did use one that had a felt tip. Aldrin said, quote, "I had a felt-tipped pen in the shoulder pocket of my suit that might do the job. He went on to explain, quote, after moving the countdown procedure up by a couple of hours in case it didn't work, I inserted the pen into the small opening where the circuit breaker switch should have been and pushed it in. Sure enough, the circuit breaker held. We were going to get off the moon after all. To this day, I still have the broken circuit breaker switch and the felt-tipped pen I used to ignite our engines. If this didn't work, it is very likely that these astronauts would have been stuck on the moon. This was indeed a very serious problem that could have gone a much different way. Starting off this list at our number 10 spot, we have Magnetic Hill. This is a location in India that has a legend surrounding it that suggests there is a magnetic force that pulls at a speed of around 20 kilometers per hour. I guess rather than a place where gravity doesn't exist, this one is like a place where there is just too much of it. This means that if you were to park your car but put it in neutral, while on most other hills you would most certainly roll down, on this hill your car will simply stay put, or maybe even find itself rolling uphill. This doesn't just affect things on the ground, however, it also affects those flying through the sky. It is said that flying over this area is troublesome for planes as well, and that they have to adjust to certain things like their speed in order to try and balance out the oddities of the area. In our number 9 spot today we have the Mystery Spot. This mysterious location finds its home in Santa Cruz, California, and it was first discovered to be a place of interest in 1939. It is said that while searching this place they felt some sort of different forces at work. The spot is about 150 square feet inside of a circular area, and it is said that the reason for the strange occurrences here is some sort of change in the magnetic field. It is said that at this mystery spot you can see water flowing upwards, balls rolling uphill, and people can lean further over than normal without falling down. There are many theories as to how this spot became what it is, and they range quite a bit. Some people swear it's just all an optical illusion, while others are certain that it's a result of a meteor that fell to Earth long ago and it created some sort of magic circle. In our number 8 spot today we have the Reverse Waterfall. This mysterious and strange location is another one that comes from India. Here there is a waterfall, but it's got a catch. While we all of course expect to see water cascading down when we think of a waterfall, this strange location instead sees the water moving towards the sky. Some people believe it's because of some anti-gravitational force, others think it's due to heavy air pressure, and I'm not a scientist, so I'll let you decide on this one. While this certainly is quite a strange place, it also definitely delivers when it comes to beauty. I think even if the water flowed down like a normal waterfall, this area would still see a lot of tourists just because of the immense natural beauty. In our number 7 spot today we have the St. Ignace Mystery Spot. For this spot, let's start off with the story behind it. Legend goes that in the 1950s, some surveyors were exploring through Michigan's Upper Peninsula when one day it was realized that none of their equipment was working as it normally should. They of course began doing some troubleshooting and testing, and it was then discovered that these tools were only acting up in a circle that was about 300 feet in diameter, and thus this mystery spot was now discovered. This spot is now visited very often as it has become quite the attraction for tourists who want to see the place where, quote, gravity does strange things. It is said that at this mystery spot, tall people appear short, and sometimes if a person stays for too long, they might even start to feel a little bit queasy or lightheaded, so visitors beware. In our number 6 spot today we have the Australian Magnetic Hill. Over in Australia, we of course have another magnetic hill. This one is sitting a few hours northeast of Adelaide. As you near the area, you will see a gigantic sculpture of a magnet, and that is definitely how you can tell that you were in the right place. Through some sort of combination of topographic anomalies, this hill has some strange occurrences. Of course, like other magnetic hills, when you park your car in neutral, you expect and assume it will roll backwards, but here the car will, or at least it appears to, roll upwards instead. It is also said that not only does the car seemingly climb, but it also gains speed as it does. At the end of the day, despite what it may seem like, this is mostly just an optical illusion rather than some sort of strange force. In our number 5 spot today we have Cosmos Mystery Area. This location is another one of those popular tourist attractions due to the unusual things that can be seen here. Apparently the trees bow in weird angles, which is one of the reasons this area was discovered, but it doesn't stop at that. When playing a game of catch, well, things aren't quite as simple as they are in most other places. Here the ball is likely to go off course in ways you wouldn't expect. It is also another one of those places where you can find yourself leaning over a lot further without falling than you normally would be able to. We're talking like the gravity-defying Michael Jackson lean. While everywhere else that is quite the feat, here at the mystery area, it's all just a part of the attraction. In our number 4 spot today we have Spook Hill. This hill is located in Florida, and it is said to be another one of the anomalies anomalies where gravity just doesn't seem to work correctly. It is said that the name of this place comes from a time when the indigenous people to the land were being removed by settlers. Here, while those who already knew the land were likely accustomed to the oddities, those who were newly settling and stealing the territory were confused by it. This is because as they were riding horses, they noticed that the horses were having a harder time going downhill than uphill, which of course would be different from the norm. This is what led to the nicknaming of the spot as Spook Hill, and ever since then it has been baffling people ever since. In our number 3 spot today we have Mount Aragats. This location is only about 30 kilometers away from the border of Turkey, and it has become quite a popular tourist attraction. Cars can go up parts of the mountain without using their engines, rivers are seen flowing against the pull of gravity. It's a strange place and it's got a legend to match. According to ancient legend, this mountain and Mount Ararat, which is a dormant volcano, are said to have been sisters who were separated after a fight. Currently the mountains are now even separated politically. This has led to a strong love between the mountains, and in their efforts to reconnect, we experience these strange gravitational phenomena. In our number 2 spot today we have the Inverted Falls. On the island of Suvura, which sits in the southern part of the Faroe Islands, residents experienced a very strange phenomena that they called the inverted waterfall. Basically, like the reverse waterfall, people experienced water spraying upwards instead of flowing downwards. According to weather experts, this was a result of a spiral column of air rotating up, sort of like a tornado. The edge of the cliff only helps to create a stronger rotation, which then sees a funnel of wind and water that appears to be rising and spraying upwards. Once we look at the science, of course this isn't a case of zero gravity, but it certainly is quite a fantastic weather phenomenon. In our number 1 spot today we have the Golden Boulder. This rock, or really boulder, truly does look like it could fall at any second, but here's the thing. It's been sitting there for 2,500 years. On top of the boulder sits a pagoda, and while the boulder itself is said to be a naturally occurring formation, it is sitting on top of a natural rock platform. This is certainly a precarious situation, as on the side of the rock formation there is a vertical drop into the valley below. I mean, it seems like a terrifying situation, and somehow this rock just remains. There is of course a legend that goes hand in hand with this location and how the rock seemingly defies gravity, and that legend suggests that the reason this rock sits in place so well is because it is being held by a strand of the Buddha's hair. This boulder really isn't fixed in place, it just happens to remain there without any support, which really is pretty astounding. It is believed that this boulder can only be moved by the touch of a woman, which is the reason that women aren't allowed to touch the rock.
Kicking off the list at number 10, WASP 96b. Okay, we have to talk about some James Webb goodness in this list, of course. NASA just released a handful of photos from its $10 billion project. This telescope launched last Christmas and the gifts have finally arrived. And I'm terrified. We are so small in the universe. What is going on? In the cluster of photos, we see a giant exoplanet called WASP 96. And no, it is not full of wasps. I mean, I hope not, who's to say? But it could hold secrets behind human existence. WASP 96 is a gas planet half the size of Jupiter, 1,150 years away from us. It orbits its star every 3 to 5 days, so I hope you love New Year's parties, because you're gonna have a lot of them. Thanks to our boy James Webb up there in space, we can now see that there's lots of water surrounding this planet. Clouds and haze, says NASA. That's good. I'm excited for more water to be found in the universe, but I'm also nervous because, you know, more water means more fish and, you know, also up aliens. Number 9, Kepler 1649c. Yeah, it's not all about James Webb today, okay? NASA's Kepler Space Telescope also discovered this one a while back, but while NASA was revisiting old observations in 2018 before, you know, retiring said telescope, they noticed previous computer algorithms misidentified it, and upon second glance, it's indeed an exoplanet. Yep, 300 light years away from Earth, it's a tad larger than our planet, and it receives a good amount of starlight. It receives about 75% of what our own sun gives off. Thing is, Kepler 1649c orbits a red dwarf, meaning solar flare-ups could prevent further life from evolving, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, I don't know. No aliens, please, thanks. Number 8, Ross 128b. I love the names for all these exoplanets. It's just like Jake 21a. You're like, okay. Potentially habitable. So much monster energy. Back in 2017, this exoplanet was discovered by Xavier Bonfils at the Institute of Planetology and Astrophysics of Grenoble. Now this one is 11 light years away from us. It's pretty close, and it only takes 10 days to complete a trip around its M-type star. The star is redder, cooler, and dimmer, so perhaps this planet could one day host life. Or maybe it one day already did. Who's to say? Either way. Don't want it. Don't want any part of these aliens. Number 7, ice moon. We're looking billions of years into the past, we're searching cosmic clouds light years away, but what about our own galaxy? What about our own solar system? What about our own moon? Could there one day be life on our moon? Back in 2018, NASA confirmed that there is surface ice on the moon's north and south pole. This was huge. NASA mineralogy mapper instruments picked up ice traces near the darkest and coldest craters of the rock. There are 3 specific signatures that prove that there is 100% water ice on the surface of moon. Yeah, and we're talking about aliens whipping out of our oceans. Like, what's going on here? Something's afoot. Number 6, Loveland flaming thing. Nice, that's a good title. Imagine opening the newspaper back in 1957 and on the front cover you read, "Loveland flaming thing brings world knocking at city's door." That's alarming, that's a pretty crazy one. What does that even mean, right? Back in 1957 in Loveland, Texas, multiple eyewitness reports began to flood in about an egg-shaped object or this circular flash of light, something egg-like, jetting across Loveland skies. I just like saying Loveland, if I'm being honest. I'm trying to say it as many times as I can. I'm probably saying it wrong, it's probably like Leveland, but I'm gonna keep going with Loveland. One witness recalls the object making a loud humming noise as it flew by, which is different than other accounts that we've heard so far for, UFOs. The egg shape keeps coming back in history, right? We've seen this in multiple accounts, but this is an encounter where it's been reported as loud, with a great rush of wind. And on top of that claim, the witness's car radio began to go haywire. It was like, it was like, in case you missed it the first time. The radio thing isn't too crazy. I mean, growing up, my computer speakers would always tell me if a phone call was about to come in. Felt like I was from the future. That was always odd. The Air Force also commented on it, saying that this was just a phenomenon caused by electrical storms. It was a ball of lightning, they say. A ball of lightning back in 1957. Crazy, haven't seen many of those since. Number 5, 2017 UFO. I remember this one because I was really scared, not sure what was happening with the universe. Back in 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was then released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. A UFO, or a UAP, sorry, we don't say UFOs anymore, now it's a UAP. There weren't a ton of details released about what exactly happened during this encounter because there weren't any details to provide, but the Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward Locking Infrared, or at FLIR if you're out of breath like me, they were able to capture an extremely fast moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking a UFO at the altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean. And then they were shocked because the craft rotated on its side and then just flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and no one can figure it out yet. If you have any ideas, sound off below. All these mystery eggs floating in and out of our towns. Number 4, Europa life. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge around it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes may be responsible for said red tinge. The surface of its moon is mostly icy, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make this data make any sense. Know what I mean? There's some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions, some fish that have never seen light ever and they're glowy somehow. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they're all located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they then flash frozen in place. What a horrible way to go. Number 3, Venus cloud. Back in September 2020, astrobiologists everywhere were excited but also skeptical at some new potential evidence that had been found in the upper clouds of Venus. You probably heard about this, right? Firstly, can we just take a second to really think about how cool of a job it is to be an astrobiologist? To just be like, yep, aliens, let's do it. And then they plan a mission and then take off. Anyways, phosphine is very rare, and usually it's poisonous gas here on Earth that is basically always met with the presence of living organisms, right? So we find this gas, it's bad, but always connects with life. Venus hasn't really been at the top of the list for choices for finding potential life due to its surface temperature, of course, and pressure to the, sulfuric acids in the clouds, and it's horrible and you can never live there ever. But this new evidence could prove to say something otherwise. 2 separate telescopes were able to pick up the signatures of phosphine in a cloud that had a similar temperature and pressure to Earth, and while this isn't concrete evidence of, space beings or bugs or anything like that, it'll at least be a reminder that we should be continuing to look for life or clues around life, you know what I mean? Even in the most unlikely places, like Venus clouds. Maybe it's space bugs also, who knows? That'd be gross. Space moths that live in clouds with phosphine. That would suck. Number 2. Astronaut sightings. We could sit on Earth all day and talk about the potential for said alien life, but who would know more than the people who have actually been to space, right? I mean, who am I? I'm just a guy who makes YouTube videos. Ask the people who have been out there, which are of course astronauts. Ask astronauts. That'd be a cool website, Ask Astronauts. It probably is a website, actually. Definitely on the list of the coolest and scariest jobs in the entire world. There haven't been a ton of people who have had the, privilege of experiencing space firsthand, but there are even less of them who have claimed to see something that could potentially prove alien existence. People who have claimed these sorts of things include Edgar Mitchell, Catherine Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. The very interesting part about many of these claims is that they will also include some sort of government cover-up as well with their claim. So it's always pretty juicy. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who spoke about his Apollo 11 experience, and he detailed the crew seeing something flying alongside them, but at first they believed it was the final stage of a detached rocket. But then Mission Control confirmed that that rocket was actually 6,000 miles away from them at the time, so there was no answers on what said flying object could have been. But they noticed it, as would you in a spaceship looking out of a window. And finally, number 1, moon life. Titan is one of Saturn's many moons. Saturn has 82 moons, so if there's any aliens hiding near Saturn, we're never gonna find them. They have many places to hide. A lot of nooks and crannies to hide behind. A lot of moons to hide behind. That's a lot of moons, and around 10 years ago, NASA's Cassini spacecraft detected water under its massive shell of ice, which is really exciting. Again, like I said with our own moon, even traces of water is amazing, let alone this much. To quote a Cassini team member, the search for water is an important goal in solar system exploration, and now we've spotted another place where it is abundant. NASA has also detected low-frequency radio waves on the icy moon, and it sounds pretty eerie. So we have radio waves and we have water. Sounds like aliens to me, my friends. As far as space mysteries go, anywhere that has water or signs of water, fish. Some sort of alien fish is hiding in there. Look at our own planet. Look at an octopus. An octopus changes colors while it dreams. Alien.
Number 10. Pisces and Aries radio signal. A radio signal was received 3 times from the same region of space in February 2003. Astronomers with the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence (SETI) project used a massive telescope in Puerto Rico to re-examine 200 sections of the sky which had all previously yielded unexplained radio signals. These signals had all disappeared except for one, which had become stronger. The signals widely thought to be the best candidate yet for alien contact and comes from a spot between the constellations Pisces and Aries where there are no obvious stars or planets. Curiously, the signal is at one of the frequencies that hydrogen, the most common element, absorbs and emits energy. Some astronomers believe that this is a very likely frequency at which aliens wishing to be noticed would transmit. Nevertheless, there's still a good chance the signal is from a never seen before natural phenomenon, but I'd like to think that it's aliens. Number 9. Mysterious beam of energy. In December 2020, researchers announced that they had captured a very mysterious beam of energy in the radio part of the electromagnetic spectrum at 980 MHz coming from the closest star to our own. Proxima Centauri, which is just 4.2 light years away, hosts one gas giant and one rocky world 17% larger than Earth that happens to be in its star's habitable zone, meaning liquid water could exist there. The unexplained signal reportedly shifted slightly while it was being observed in a way that resembled the shift caused by the movement of a planet. Researchers are excited but cautious, explaining that they will need to figure out if more mundane sources, such as a comet, hydrogen cloud, or even human technology, could be mimicking an alien signal, and that it will likely take time before they know one way or another if aliens are contacting us. Number 8. Milky Way signal. On April 28, 2020, two ground-based radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves within the Milky Way. It was the first time an FRB had ever been detected within our galaxy, and despite only lasting a millisecond, it was almost impossible to miss. Located just 300,000 light years away from Earth, the FRB was picked up by the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, CHIME, and the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emission 2, STARE-2. CHIME wasn't even looking in the right direction, and we still saw it loud and clear in our peripheral vision, said Kyoshu Masu, assistant professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. STARE-2 also saw it, and it's only a set of a few radio antennae literally made out of cake pans. April 2020's discovery was also notable for being the most energetic radio blast that astronomers have recorded in the Milky Way. But what made it most exciting is that scientists are now closer to determining origin of FRBs. They've been billions of light years away, making them a lot harder to study, but now there's one close by. Number 7. Mysterious signals from a distant galaxy. The CHIME Observatory found 13 FRBs, and among it was a very unusual repeating signal coming from the same source about 1.5 billion light years away. Such an event has only been reported once before by a different telescope. Knowing that there is another suggests that there could be more life out there, said Ingrid Stairs, an astrophysicist from the University of British Columbia. And with more repeaters and more sources available to study, we may be able to understand these cosmic puzzles, where they're from, and what causes them. The telescope detected 13 of the radio bursts almost immediately, including the repeater. The research has now been published in the journal Nature. We have discovered a second repeater, and its properties are very similar to the first repeater. This tells us more about the properties of the repeater as a population, said Sir Harsh Tendulkar of McGill University, Canada. Number 6. Star closest to the sun radio signal. An as yet unexplained radio signal appears to be coming from the direction of the star closest to the sun, a small red star roughly 4.2 light years away called Proxima Centauri. Adding to the excitement, at least 2 planets orbit this star, one of which might be a temperate and rocky like Earth. Breakthrough Listen, a decade-long search for alien broadcasts from the nearest million stars, was using Australia's Parkes Observatory to study Proxima Centauri when the team detected the signal, which they dubbed BLC-1. The radio waves were picked up in observations made between April and May 2019. While processing those observations in the summer, Shane Smith, an undergraduate from Hillside College in Michigan working with Breakthrough, spotted BLC-1 apparently radiating from the star. Although the signal is faint, BLC-1 passed all the tests the Breakthrough team uses to filter out millions of signals generated by humans. It was narrow in bandwidth, appeared to drift in frequency, and disappeared when the telescope shifted its gaze from Proxima to a different object. Over the following days, 4 similar signals appeared, although some have been ruled out as radio interference. It's pretty expected that every now and then you'll see something weird, but this is interesting because it's something that's weird and that we have to think about the next steps, says Sophia Sky, a graduate student at Pennsylvania State University and the Breakthrough team member leading the signal analysis. Number 5. Farthest radio signal from a galaxy. Astronomers using a radio telescope in India have captured the most distant ever radio signal from a galaxy. This signal came from a galaxy called SDSSJ0826 plus 5630 that exists 8.8 billion light years away. That essentially means that it exists closer to the Big Bang than any other galaxy previously detected using radio astronomy. A galaxy emits different kinds of radio signals, said Arnab Chakraborty, a postdoctoral researcher who studies cosmology at the Department of Physics at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. Until now, it's only been possible to capture this particular signal from a galaxy nearby, limiting our knowledge to those galaxies closer to Earth. The researchers from both Montreal and India used the giant meter wave radio telescope in Pune, India, to capture the signal at a specific wavelength called the 21 centimeter line. The signal from the galaxy was emitted when the universe was only 4.9 billion years old, but because the universe is expanding, it took 8.8 billion years to reach the telescope.
Wow. This breakthrough proves that it's possible to observe faraway galaxies using low-frequency radio telescopes. This will help us understand the composition of galaxies at a much greater distance from Earth, said Arnab. Number 4. Radio signal heartbeat. Astronomers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have picked up repetitive radio signals from a galaxy billions of light years from Earth. Scientists have not been able to pinpoint the exact location of the radio waves yet, but the signals have been occurring steadily and last up to 3 seconds. Most fast radio bursts, or the FRBs, only last a few milliseconds. Within this window, the team detected bursts of radio waves that repeated every 0.2 seconds in a clear periodic pattern, similar to a beating heart, MIT said in a statement. On December 21, 2019, researcher at the Dominion Radio Astrophysical Observatory in British Columbia, Canada, picked up signal of a potential FRB, according to the MIT statement. Not only was it very long, lasting about 3 seconds, but there were periodic peaks that were remarkably precise, emitting every fraction of a second, boom boom boom, like a heartbeat, said Danielle Michelli, a postdoctoral researcher in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Calvi Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research. This is the first time the signal itself is periodic. Data on the bursts, including their frequency and how they change based on where the source is located in proximity to Earth, could help researchers determine at what speed the universe is expanding. Number 3. Bright, quick blasts of radio waves. Repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster, which is among the last places astronomers expected to find them. Often originating billions of light years away, the extremely bright, extremely brief bursts of radio waves, known as the fast radio bursts, have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations to date, scientists surmise that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects. But a fast radio burst discovered has now been traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. To put it in perspective, finding this burst among a cluster of aging stars is kind of like finding a smartphone embedded in the Stonehenge. The observation doesn't make sense. Brian Gainsler, an astronomer from the University of Toronto, said this is definitely not a place where fast radio bursts are expected to live. Scientists are struggling to explain the cosmic anchurism. They're also moving toward the conclusion that maybe, as with many other celestial phenomena, there are multiple ways to cook up a fast radio burst. Number 2. Bursts of energy. While mapping radio waves across the universe, astronomers found a celestial object releasing giant bursts of energy, unlike anything they have ever seen before. The spinning space object, spotted in March 2018, beamed out radiation 3 times per hour. In those moments, it became the brightest source of radio waves viewable from Earth, acting like a celestial lighthouse. A study on the discovery was published in the journal Nature. Lead study author Natasha Hurley-Walker, an astrophysicist at the Curtin University node of the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, said this object was appearing and disappearing over a few hours during her observations. That was completely unexpected. It was kind of spooky for an astronomer because there's nothing known in the sky that does that, and it's really quite close to us, about 4,000 light years away. It's in our galactic backyard. Curtin University doctoral student Tyrone O'Doherty made the unusual discovery while using the Murchison-Wilford Array, aka the MWA telescope in the outback of Western Australia. Tyrone said, "It's exciting that the source I identified last year has turned out to be such a particular object. The MWA's wide field of view and extreme sensitivity are perfect for surveying the entire sky and detecting the unexpected." And coming in at number 1, the WOW signal. In 1997, astronomer Jerry Amen was researching at the Ohio State University when an incredible and unexplainable radio signal was detected using the school's Big Ear telescope. In those days, information was run through what was called an IBM 1130 mainframe computer before being printed on paper and then studied by hand. Upon reviewing his findings, Jerry came across something he had never seen before. There, in a vertical column, was the sequence 6EQUJ5. Jerry was amazed and immediately circled the sequence and wrote "wow" right beside it, hence the name. The signal they picked up had come from nearly 220 million light years away, and there was no explanation as to how or why a radio signal could be detected from that distance. It immediately became a sensation in both the science community and the rest of the world, and was used to support the search for alien life in the universe. Jerry himself says he's convinced that it certainly has the potential to be the first signal from extraterrestrial intelligence.